I would like to acknowledge that this video is being filmed on the traditional lands of the Wurrundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander or First Nations people who may be watching this video today. Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a Books Beside My Bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. I film one of these every week, so most of you know the drill. This is my reading week from the 19th until the 24th of March. I read a total of 8 things during this time period, 1,995 pages, and my yearly reading total is 136 books. To kick off the week, I actually read 2 of the physical books on my TBR. They were part of my Read My TBR Cart challenge, and that was the first 2 books in TJ Klune's Extraordinary series, which is his young adult superhero romance series. And I remember when the first book, The Extraordinaries, came out, there was a little bit of controversy around it because the main character, or the main protagonist of this series, is the son of a cop, and he hero worships his dad. And of course there was a lot of things going on around the world around police brutality. When I read Flashfire, I was really pleased to see that some of that was actually addressed. So be aware of that going into it. I did really enjoy this series. I quite like superhero stories and I love TJ Klune, so I knew he was going to do something really fun with it. In this series we follow Nick, who, as I said, is the son of a police officer, and he lives in a world where superheroes exist. No one quite knows where they came from or how they came into being, but they exist. And in the city where he lives, there are there's one superhero and one supervillain, as Nick believes. And Shadowstar is Nick's crush. He absolutely adores the hero, and he writes fanfiction about him, and we get snippets of that fanfiction in this series. And as the story progresses, we and Nick begin to realize that perhaps there is more going on with Shadowstar and his nemesis than what we first thought. This deals with teen friendship, teen relationships. You have a very diverse cast that feature not only gender and sexual diversity, but also neurodiversity. There's lots of over-the-top fight scenes, there's lots of excerpts from fanfiction, which reads like real fanfiction when you think it's written by a teen, so beware for some cringeworthy moments, but also very highly entertaining. And ultimately it does become a friends to lovers story. And I just really loved the characters in this book, and I like that Nick grows so much over the course of the 2 books in lots of different ways. So I do recommend them, but just be aware of the issues in the first book and know that they do begin to be addressed in the second book, and hopefully will continue to be addressed in the third book when it comes out later this year. Then I was listening to the Heaving Bosoms podcast, and they were talking about a book called One True Pairing by Kathy Yardley, and this is a celebrity romance with fake dating. So you have an actor called Jake Reese, who is just sort of gaining some notoriety because he's on this TV show called Mystics, and it's got a huge fan base, and basically they're trying to be like the next Supernatural. He's determined to make his career successful. However, he's really being hounded by fans, and he's finding that quite uncomfortable. And he's in this town for a convention, and there are some choice things that happen, and he ends up hiding out in a cafe, and the barista in the cafe helps him hide from some rabid fans, and Hayley ends up helping him out, and they end up having this almost one-night stand. She has to leave because her sister needs her. Her sister has agoraphobia, and so she leaves mid-encounter. And then a few other bits and pieces happen, and Jake's agent, publicist, I can't remember which one it is, suggests that he finds a girlfriend so that, he's not harassed so much in public, and he ends up making Hayley a proposal. So he finds her in her family's bookstore, and they agree to fake date for the time that he's here in town for the convention, and they actually end up finding a really good connection with each other, and it's really sweet, but obviously complicated by their lives that are very different. And Jake is trying to make a go of his career, and Hayley is trying to save her family's bookstore, which is part of the exchange of fake dating, is that hopefully Jake and some of his co-stars will sign some merch or something for their store to bring in some customers during the convention. And it was just really fun, short, very easy to read, and very enjoyable. Then I read Night by KD Rebekah, which is book 5 in the Club Alias series. This one I heard recommended on Tiff's channel. So Tiffany is Neverland Pixie on Instagram, or Tiff Reads Books here on YouTube, and she is absolutely delightful and has amazing book recommendations, and every time she talks about a book I just want to pick it up. But this was the one that stood out for me when I was watching a video earlier in the week, and I literally one-click downloaded it and read it that night. So this is about Clarice and Brian, who have known each other for over a decade, and they first met when Brian was in Afghanistan. He's a former soldier, and Clarice was at the time a war photographer. And after a mission went wrong over there, Clarice ended up nursing him back to health while he was in the infirmary. and then their friendship stuck around for years after that, and they became best friends with benefits. But it was never serious because they were both in very different stages of their lives, moving around doing all sorts of things. So they'd hook up when they could, and then they would go back to their regular lives. But now that they're a little bit older, Brian is really ready to make their relationship something more permanent, and he invites Clarice back to his home and wants to show her around the club that he belongs to, where he's a dominant. It's a BDSM club, and he works there with a bunch of his friends. And we find out that Brian and Clarice's relationship does really feature dominance and submission, and they're both switches, and depending on the circumstances on which they're hooking up, depends on who is the dominant and who is the submissive. And it's a really interesting dynamic, and I really liked them as characters, so it was really fascinating to read. And this story is really told through the present day, where Clarice is coming to Ryan's home, and also the past, where they first met and they first realized their connection and friendship and relationship. So really, really fun, very short, very easy to read, well worth checking out. I would really like to read some of the other books in the Club Alias series. So thank you very much to Tiff for the recommendation. Then I read one of my NetGalley arcs, A Matter of Hive and Death by Nancy Coco. This is a cozy mystery, and I have not read a cozy mystery in a while, and this one is very bee themed. So this is book 2 in the Oregon Honeycomb Mystery series. So I had to look at that because it's a mouthful. It's about Wren, who runs this very small boutique shop that features products made with honey. And honey and beeswax, so candles and beeswax wraps and honey and all that sort of thing. And one of the features of her store is that she has this beautiful hive inside the store that's behind, a glass wall to keep everyone safe. It's quite apparent that Wren has been involved in mysteries in the town before because, everyone warns her off things, but she stumbles across a friend who has been killed and his beehives have been destroyed. She decides to start investigating, despite the local town sheriff, police officer person, I forget the title in this one because I forget how it works in the States. Anyway, he, basically begs her not to do it because the last time she got involved in something, she was a murder suspect. She's not a murder suspect in this one, but she does involve herself quite heavily in the fact that it appears there are people going around to local bee owners and destroying hives. She's very concerned about the environmental impact of this because she's very passionate about the subject. This one was just okay. It was nice to read a cozy mystery. I haven't read one for a while. I don't know if I was particularly in the mood for it, especially since I've been so tired this week, but it was fun. I like the fact that it was bee themed. That was really cool. I don't know if I'll go back and read the first book in the series, but it was enjoyable for what it was. And then just like the last 2 weeks, because I've been so exhausted, I went back and I read the third book in the Relic series by Maddox. So I've read one a week for the last 3 weeks, which, if you know me, is very weird for me to space these out by week because normally I would just binge read my favorite books back to back. So that was an achievement to spread them out. So King and Queen is book 3. This is the Dinosaur Shifter series. You guys have heard me talk about it multiple times now. I adore it. This is the story of Royal, who is one of the dino shifters. He's a regular Ceratops, as on the cover, and he is normally the tech guy for the Relic team. So he doesn't tend to go out in the field on his own, but he's sent out by Montana, who is their head person / T-Rex boss. And he's sent out to go and investigate some new bones that have been discovered. I think it's in Canada. And while he doesn't normally do these jobs solo, Montana's asked him to go out there, and the night before he goes out to the dig, he ends up going to a bar, and there he hooks up with a guy called Blaze. Blaze has just quit his job. He's traveling around. He's trying to make a name and build a profile for himself as someone who does social media for natural history museums and dinosaur digs and things like that. So they have this one night stand in a bar. They don't exchange names or anything else, but when Blaze turns up at this dig site, and he goes there after hours because they didn't allow him on site during the day, he ends up stumbling across people unearthing one of the dinosaur fossils that in turn happens to be a brand new dinosaur shifter after waking up. And it's an Albertosaurus, I think is the name, like a T-Rex. And then there's another dinosaur involved as well. All gets out of hand, and then Blaze and Royal end up discovering that someone is stealing things, and they go on this road trip to try and figure out what is going on and which museums have been affected. There is a road trip, there is an only one bed situation, there is a drag show, there are giant dinosaur fights, and I loved it. That's all I can say. It was great. And the last 2 books that I'm going to talk about in this week's wrap up are both from Rebekah Weatherspoon's Fit trilogy. These are fitness themed contemporary romance stories with a BDSM element. So there is Fit, which is book 1, and this one is about Violet, who is a plus size woman who works in food related reality TV, and she decides that she wants to get in shape because she's constantly surrounded by very, very tasty, delicious food in her daily life. And she goes to a gym where she ends up feeling humiliated by a class, which I have been there. I don't like group classes like that because way to make me feel inadequate. But the trainer of that class then recommends another trainer who is known to have a softer touch, and his name is Grant. And not only is he a personal trainer, he is also a BDSM dominant. And after a massive miscommunication at the start of their meeting, they actually end up training together. He listens to her, he listens to what makes her comfortable, he pushes her, but he does it in a way where it doesn't make her feel uncomfortable. But an attraction grows between them, and then they end up having a relationship. And he ends up training her to be a submissive, and what that means and what that world means. The second book, which is called Tamed, is about Grant's best friend Armand, who is another dominant that belongs to the same club that Grant belongs to. He's also Grant's business partner. They own a gym together. He ends up meeting a woman called Nyla, who had previously had another trainer who she was having a sexual relationship with. However, it's come out very publicly that he has been sleeping with other clients. And so her father, who happens to be quite a wealthy businessman, who didn't realize that she was sleeping with her trainer, tells her that she can no longer see him because it's not good for their image, and that he will find her another trainer. And he ends up connecting her with Armand. Nyla is quite a strong personality. She knows exactly what she wants, and she's determined to sleep with Armand, but he's very down the line, like that's not happening. Like, he's attracted to her, but he also is very wary of her, at least initially. And then Nyla begins to uncover the fact that Armand has another side of his life, that he's a dominant, that he participates in the kink scene, and she begins to ask a lot of questions about it. And their relationship starts when he gets a commitment from her that this is something that she actually wants to pursue. I loved Armand in this. I was not a huge fan of Nyla. She just rubbed me the wrong way, but that's totally fine. Like, some characters do that. Part of it was just because she makes demands off Armand very, very quickly. It just, part of that didn't feel right to me. But eventually they sort of reach their equilibrium, and by the time we get to that stage, I was totally fine. It's just the initial part of the story because she's used to getting everything that she wants. It's an interesting series. I will read the third book at some point because I do have it, and I will finish it out hopefully next week and just wrap up that particular series. All right, so those are the books that I read this week. In the comments, I would love to know if you have read any of them or if you're planning on picking any of them up. Alternatively, feel free to share something that you have been reading and loving in the last little while. And if you want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave flame emojis down below. Otherwise, I hope wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.